He's a proper nut for the game. He's not one of those people who goes, I need some time away. Welcome everyone to the Eddie and Jimmy podcast. Make sure you find us on YouTube and Instagram. Just search Eddie and Jimmy. It's that simple. Thanks to Fiji Airways and Hyundai. Hyundai can do big things in the new Alexio. Visit your local Hyundai dealer today. And of course, Fiji Airways. Visit FijiAirways.com to book your flight to Fiji and beyond. Fiji Airways, where happiness takes flight, and probably where you're still finding Eddie, of course, guts up on the beach somewhere. But that means the man who has more than filled in, he's actually challenging for a position, maybe the All-Australian position in the podcast sphere. And I speak of Sam Docherty. How are you, Sam?
Oh, I'm in the squad. I don't think I'll make the team, but it's good to be here. It's, I think, my last week, but Ed decides to come back from his month and a half holiday and jump back in the chair.
We need a proof of life on Ed. Of course, he's been on a boat with Mike Tyson. Wonder if he asked Mike to just do a bit of shadow boxing. You know, after you have a few drinks, you know, guys start to...
Do you reckon Eddie would be that guy that does that?
Come show us your best. Like, or can I pat your tiger?
It'd be a dangerous one to do, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, if Eddie comes back with a face tattoo, we know he's had a great time over there. Hey, let's take a look at the stories dominating the AFL in round 19. But first and foremost, it's just been announced. Of course, press conferences going on left, right and centre. Camp it down, Ken Hinkley, the new coach, the first coach of the Tasmanian Devils.
Yeah, didn't that creep up on us all very quickly? It's I remember only maybe a week or two ago, everyone's like, oh, the process is playing out, but not expecting to have an announcement for a little while. And then in the space of about a week, we went from thinking it could be Bucks to it's Ken Hinkley. So, yeah, crazy turn of events and great choice. I think you've had more to do with Ken than I have, but just listening to him across his years, I've always not understood the hate that he got from the Port Adelaide faithful about the results that he didn't get a premiership, but he made them a sustainably good footy club and got them off the canvas for a large part. So good leader to take on the Tassie job.
All three options were fantastic options for the Tasmanian Football Club, of course, Nathan Buckley and John Longmire. And senior coaching is more than just Saturday, let's call it, Saturday 2 o'clock. I know we never play that time slot, but we get the drift of the weekend anyway. But for Tassie, an ambassador, building club, you're going to have a lot of development going on, of course, with 17 and 18-year-olds coming in. You're going to have to find a new captain, new leadership. Everything's brand new and sparkly, but how can you actually establish the feel of a football club really quickly? And I think a lot of people looked at what the Giants did really well. They made it feel like a football club really, really quickly. Now, they haven't tasted the ultimate success yet, but they've been in the pointy end many, many times already in their short history. And I think that's the appeal of Kenny. And, they all had different appeals, of course. We know they present well. And I always find it funny when you discuss someone in glowing terms that people tend to take it as a knock on the others. This is not the case. I'm just talking about Kenny and the appeal for whoever was on the panel who had the final decision on the coach. The Geelong experience, long-time assistant coach there as well. His playing career, which often gets overlooked as well. Very, very good player as well. Then his coaching, the Saints in their times back then, of course, Geelong, Gold Coast and expansion, like that is a big factor.
Being a part of that expansion and what went right or wrong at the start of the Gold Coast Footy Club is a massive advantage across the other two, definitely.
Yeah, and then the Port Adelaide Football Club, where they were when he started to where he took them. Yes, he didn't get them to a grand final, but that's actually a fair journey, and he's seen a lot what Tassie's going to see with all these stops along the way. So that would have helped. Plus, knowing him personally, even back to my local football club at Bell Park, the EQ piece, the be able to connect. Kenny's great at talking to your footy rogues as much as he is talking to the footy dorks. So, the guys who live and breathe footy to the guys who... difficult backgrounds, different backgrounds, the scallywags, the jokesters, all that. He's got a good knack of dialing up and down, and whether using the stick or the cuddle or whatever way you want to put it. He has a very high emotional intelligence, which is going to be important because you're all going to be lumped in. And so then, as we're talking about, he's part of building the whole entire football club, and then the ambassadorship that's going to come with the Tassie Devils. Like a lot of discussion around, you're going to have to get in the car and you're going to have to be in coffee shops and you're going to be the face and you're going to be having the discussion. I think he's a very relatable person, Kenny. When you look at him, He could look like your local footy coach, and knowing him 24/7, he'd happily talk football. Like he's a proper nut for the game. He's not one of those people who goes, I need some time away. His favourite thing away from football is football. He's watching football.
Well, even we watched a little bit of the press conference. He said, all I know is coaching. I love coaching. It's what he wants to do. He loves football. He wants to be part of a football environment. And as you said, for a coach down in Tassie that's trying to bring Tassie together around the footy team, I think it's a great sign. Even if you just go to how he left Port Adelaide and then how all the players felt about him leaving Port Adelaide. Like he goes back there in the media and he's standing there pre-game and all the players are huddled up around him to say hello. Like you can tell that there was a lot of love by the playing group there, which again speaks to your point around the EQ, which is a huge part of coaching these days, especially from a ground-up footy club. Yeah,
and now he gets a big say in how his football department looks, where he can find the other areas that he needs. But where do you think it leaves John Longmire and Nathan Buckley? Because they both declared strong interest in Tasmania, and that's why they quickly got to a final three for the Tasmanian Footy Club. Not so much an interest, of course, in the other vacancies, whether it be Essendon and Carlton. Let's start with Bucks, because clearly going to Geelong to be an assistant coach, I think that benefited Geelong, but it also benefited Nathan Buckley.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to see how this now plays out, because Tassie made their decision quickly, and from what we hear in the media, the Carlton and Essendon processes haven't gone too far into it. Does John Longmire now, maybe he wanted Tassie number one, but now that that's not off the table, does he throw his hand up for the other gigs? It'll be very interesting.
How do you reckon Essendon feel about it? Some people go, how do you reckon Essendon go? We're his second choice.
Yeah, but ultimately that's as a coach, and if you're going for one of these jobs, you probably do have a preference, and you've got to put all of your eggs in that basket. And now that one's finished, they might not either have ambitions to go to either of the other clubs, and they wanted to try the Tasmanian experience and build the club from the start. So it is an interesting one, though. Bucks went back to coaching out of the media, well, half out of the media, still in the media, but to go back to learn what Geelong does with a keen eye on the Tasmanian job. So it will be interesting to see, does he continue down the coaching path, or does he step back out to the media? Was this to just get
Tassie
to get Tassie? Yeah. That was his goal, and if it wasn't Tassie, then he steps back out, and it'll be an interesting watch in the back half of the year. Or does he have an eye on continuing the path down in Geelong and potentially taking over after Chris Scott? Like, who knows? All this will probably come out in the wash, because everyone's had so many eyes on the Tasmania job for this. It will be interesting, and with John Longmire, maybe that conversation with Essendon, I don't know, there's a conversation there whether that might be up for grabs now.
Yeah, and I'm with you on Bucks. I don't know him personally. It's just, played against him, see him in the media, listen to him, does some fantastic work in the media. And, it'd be interesting to see, was it just Tassie? And that's why I would mention, it was good for Geelong, good for him. He gets up to speed, gets some new IP, and, gets the coaching hours back in, the refresh. Or does he go, look, I was only really for Tassie. All right, let's go back to full-time media. It's, again, that's with no opinion. I'm just like you. I'm fascinated to see what he does.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll probably be at the end of the year, we'll get a really good idea about whether he does have ambition and harbours that ambition to be back coaching, or it was a kind of a one-stop shop trying to get the Tasmania job. So, again, I don't know him at all. Same as you, I just watch him in the media. But it's an interesting case that he did both this year. So does he just continue to do both? Does he step further into coaching to try and get that resume up? Definitely be watching the back half of the year.
What I found interesting going back to Tassie, and this will be where Ken can have some big impact, because you have to have a lot of face-to-face chats with young players and some players potentially they're trying to get down to Tassie, because he's very good at building that relationship, which you touched on, of course, with Port Adelaide players and Geelong players and all players he's come across. Dave Matthews, who's the outgoing CEO of the GWS Giants, and now this is going to be how, I guess, the tone is going to start to change, because the more Tassie becomes real, we know they're real, but more the coaches in place, the CEO's in place. We've heard, there's a couple of players signed. How now I guess the lens of, well, now you're a competitor, you're not down the road. I found it really interesting. Dave Matthews, the outgoing Giant CEO, on 3AW, saying, well, nice place to visit, but I wouldn't go down there and have a career. Which is
big call.
Well, probably one of the number one targets for Tassie is Tom Green. Yeah.
Yep.
So you can sense a bit of the competitive tension is coming out. But I'll ask you in two different stages. Sam Docherty, what was your talent league club again?
Gippsland Power.
Gippsland Power. Sam Docherty, Gippsland Power, gets a phone call. Hey, Sam, I've got some cash here as a 17-year-old. Would you like to come play for the Tasmanian Devils? Locked away AFL.
See, I think Tassie is a great opportunity. I think from there's always the allure of Melbourne as the footy city, and that's kind of what plays out a lot in some of these sort of trade scenarios, go homes, all those sorts of things. But Tassie, you get a whole sort of state really on you. You're the only one team state in the league, so everyone's supporting you. It's a lovely place to live. Like if you're just going on, I love wine and I love golf courses.
Oh, perfect.
It's perfect for those. So I think it's it'd be a really great place to play footy. I've been pretty outspoken around the roof on the stadium. I think that will be a big draw card and will have influence on some players, whether you're going down there to play in what is some terrible conditions at times, and we've seen that play out when teams play down at Hobart or even at Lonnie. So there's that caveat. But if you know that that's coming in the future, hopefully it is. Yeah. But if you do know that's coming in the future, then that probably ticks that box off. But I don't think. I think Dave Matthews' statement was way too strong. I think there's enough players that will love go and play down there. Plus, you've got the go home factor of the Tasmanian guys that are in the league at the moment.
So. Go ahead 10 years, you're 27.
Great retirement spot.
There you go. So it is a great retirement spot. Would it be the fact, because I share some pretty similar views to you, and you're going to attract the people who are excited by it anyway. So like the whole, they're not going to like it. Well, they're not the people. You'll find out pretty quickly they're not the people to approach. You're a Vic Country kid.
I think that's
I'm a Vic Country kid. Do you think, a bit like what Brisbane did, when they started to turn it around, of course, McCluggage and Berry from St Pat's, Ballarat, put them in pairs. Obviously there's Link McCarthy and Lockie Neal. Put them in pairs. They were good mates as well. Would there be a little bit of that tactic going on? People who actually, hey, Hobart, that's kind of a big place for me first before going to Melbourne.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the strategy behind the list build is really important, and we've kind of seen a bit of this play out in the media as it is, but targeting ex-Tasmanian people that have that passion for the jumper and for the state. You're picking players from interstate clubs at the moment that might want to jump ship. Then I think you go down the country path in terms of if you're picking at Victorian guys, because there's a lot of Victorian guys, and I play with a lot of Victorian guys that love the country. I'm talking Albury way, some of the real country lads that have come from up that way they go home all the time. They want to be around the farm. They want that part of life. Tasmania offers that you can go down there and be sort of immersed in that straight away. So I think when the list manager and footy manager and all that's announced with Kenny as a coach, I think the strategy around how you build the list and what types of players you bring in down there becomes really important. I don't think it's just to plug and play every player and hope that it works.
We mentioned the Essendon Football Club and the GWS Giants and some Essendon love. They win in Melbourne. Woo! I actually found myself watching that game yesterday, urging them on.
Yeah, I was barracking for Essendon, which I don't think I've done that too many times in my life.
No, I don't think I have either. Their first win in Melbourne in something like 430 days, of course. They won over at the mess around there in Adelaide, the gather round. Is it the Essendon story, or what's going to get slipped through the cracks, how poor the Giants were, who coughed up a really good opportunity to make, almost, that'd be a game inside the top 10? Yeah,
well, it's both, isn't it, really? It's from the positive side, we'll go there first, because it's always nice to start in the positives. Essendon's desire to win and defend, and I loved watching them yesterday. There was a level of desperation that they had versus GWS, and I don't think we've said that at all for the year. And when you're watching Essendon, large parts you've been sitting there going, where is the desire to defend and play as a team? And that came all to the forefront yesterday. So really good win for Dean Solomon, first win in the helm. You watched what it meant to all of the younger players there that haven't won many games of football, without Nate Caddy as well. So it was a really big moment for them as a football club, and Very well done. From the GWS side, as you said, really disappointing that they've now put that last wild card spot. I had them as the favourite to get there. They dropped that one. Now they put themselves right back in the middle of the pack with it. So a huge cough up, especially the way that they lost it.
I loved Essendon's last 90 seconds.
Cole Langford, very good footy IQ.
Great kick into him as well, and great mark. But you could even see him. He picked it up really quickly. And he was telling his two teammates, which might have been Roberts and I forget who was the other player next to him, like, separate you two. Because he actually wanted to go to them, like, move. You could see him, Vermington, move so I can actually kick the ball. Because they're both just standing there, like, trying to direct him. He's like, yeah, I've got it, Nat. Can you bugger off so I can actually kick it to you? And so that's then why he swung the one out wide to Pryor. Took the game away. So the only hope was Langford missing, and then Giants go coast to coast, which we know they've got that capability. But just didn't give him the ball back.
No, really smart play, and you can see that for a team that hadn't. And this is you don't want to gloss over that moment because a team that's so desperate to win and haven't won for the year, in those moments sometimes can just be so desperate to win. The thought of kicking the goal might be that's the biggest thing, but to be able to think your way through it, put yourself into the boundary, even at worst, I know they marked the one inside 50. That's probably going to be a stoppage inside 50. You can set up in behind it. Really hard to transition from, like, you're in the 5% to go from that stoppage to goal. So, great to see. Well done to Cole Langford. Well done to the Essendon Footy Club. Really big win for them.
And it was really nice to see Roby, Farrow, and Sharp as well had pretty good games. Yeah,
and just on the Giants, from a team, so their wins this
it is wild.
This is wild. So they've beaten Freo, Hawthorn, Brisbane, Melbourne, and the Cats. But then they've lost to Essendon, West Coast, Carlton, St Kilda twice, and Gold Coast. Just what a strange year for them. There's not many other ways to explain it.
Well, we talk about, I think we said this last week, to be a fly on the wall with Damien Hardwick. To be a fly on the wall at Adam Kingsley's office, you just can't. Hang on.
What is going on?
Hang on, you blokes. Like, you'd be rubbing his head. Like, you're almost saying this, almost put that on the wall. What are you thinking when we approach these teams, and what are you thinking when we approach? I actually need to get inside your melons.
It was really interesting. I watched Dan Gorringe did the watch along, and one of the GWS boys jumped on it, and there was so much rhetoric around. Got to treat this game properly. It's a really important game for the footy club. Like, we need to rock up with the right mindset. Did they overplay it and then made themselves more nervous? I don't know. It's always in hindsight you're looking back at that.
Well, when you hear that just sounds like when you're talking to little kids and they're just telling you the things that they want you to hear. Oh, we've got to play this hard, because none of your performance, energy, effort, attention to detail, none of it pointed to that.
Yeah, it's a and with the history of the season, it just, I don't know, they really shot themselves in the foot. Their remaining games: Sydney, Port Adelaide, Gold Coast, West Coast, then finish with Adelaide.
Yeah, and they've got huge issues in the ruck position, which we're now, with the ruck rules, we're seeing sides with centre bounce, stoppage. It's as important as ever.
Geez, those ruck rules have shifted a few players' trajectory of careers, haven't they? Just
Correct.
The inability to jump in centre bounce, it's really hurting some of those guys, and then they're being left kind of behind because they're taking more throw-ins away with the lasso rule.
And they just committed to Madden for another 4 years after Richmond's big offer for Madden. So I've said this on this podcast. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just really fascinated some decisions for the Giants postseason. Like, how will they actually assess their year? Will they go like this? Hang on, we've beaten really good sides, so that says we're good. But then we beat really poor sides. We play one game, we lose a really good player, then we get a really good player in. Like it'd be difficult for them to get a beat on
where they're at.
Yeah, where they're at and what decisions. And is Toby here? Do we take that as an opportunity to call it be a bit ruthless, or do we? No, Toby's gone, and then what do we do around the edges? It'd be really curious where that they actually put a beat on it, and then if you actually got someone who had no involvement at all with the Giants, to give them an assessment and how close or how far apart those two. Because, sometimes you get inside a football club, you can get a little bit close.
Yeah, you believe it. And that's the best part about being in a football club is you believe what you're trying to do.
Especially with list and recruiting, because if you recruit a guy, oh, I'm all in because you've just seen the best of them, and it's got to work because it makes me look even better as well and list decisions. But it'd be interesting if you have someone who was just completely removed, and they did their doc, and then the Giants did their doc, and you actually said, "Oh, is it they both there, or are they far apart?"
And that's probably the most important decision that your football club makes is, where is my list at? Because ultimately that's what drives your strategy. And if you get that wrong, then your strategy can be very flawed. So if you, for example, if you think your list is way better than what it actually is, and you're doubling down, trying to take that final step into finals or into the grand final, and ultimately your list is in the bottom 6, you can really stuff up your future planning of the football club. Vice versa, if you're early enough and you've got, our list needs some regeneration, you make some calls, trade some players out, get some picks, and then really set up around the next group. That can be a really smart way to do it. But as you said, you got to know where that group's at and where's the right decision.
Doc, I think we should stop talking because we've got a business idea to talk about after this. Doc and Jim's call it club review.
External club reviews.
Yes, we could make some cash out of this. Hey, contact us too at Eddie and Jimmy, any football clubs as well. Hey, Darcy Fogarty. Now
your boy.
Yeah, can kick the football beautifully well and just hammered it nicely. 4 goals again. The conversation around his game, he was fantastic as well and one of the best on the ground. In a tackling action, and one angle looked very crude, the swinging arm where, the forearm clocked Harry Cunningham, who took no further part. So obviously concussion comes into play. We know a fair bit of, the rubric.
The rubric
of the MRO is outcome. Concussion elevates everything. Where do you reckon this one lands? Because I think wherever it lands, I reckon the Crows are already preempting a challenge.
Yeah. Well, they've already been suspended.
Have we got?
I think he's at 3. He's at 3
weeks. He's been given 3 weeks. My apology. 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit overs. It's again when you're trying to judge someone's intent in a footballing action. Yes, it looks bad when you slow it down to the
everything looks bad.
As slow as we can slow them down on cameras in real time. Yeah, you're trying to judge whether that's careless or intentional. That's really hard to do. And I think probably that our old friend the rubric, intentional is 3 or 4 weeks and careless is probably 1 or none. Yeah. So I think they'll challenge it. I don't know if they have at this moment, but I think they'd challenge it, try and downgrade it to that careless motion or understand severity and didn't play any further part of the game, but it didn't look like he meant it. So, but this is the hard part.
He was going for the big strong tackle.
Yeah. But that's part of the game. Whether you want to see that out of the game completely, maybe that's the prerogative of the AFL. But I'm not surprised he got weeks, but I don't think it's worth 3.
Yeah,
personally,
I agree with that. They call it a rivalry, but not in recent times. Collingwood and Carlton, 14 of the last 16 Collingwood Football Club. So what did you make of the game? Of course, Nick Dacos was incredible again, and sometimes we skim over it, and he's one of those players that he's been so good from the start that people look to pick scabs off him, but he was sensational. Like his kicking, his ability to break the lines, the way he brings players into the game. Did it say more about Collingwood and now that they've got this momentum, they've given up a little bit in their defence by meaning they're trusting their defence to get a bit more ball in play, and we've seen Carlton as well playing with a bit more flow in their game under Josh Fraser. Did it say more about Collingwood and I guess the momentum they've got at this stage of the year, or the fact that Carlton, they've dropped a couple in a row? I don't think that is overly concerning, but there's still big gaps in their game. Like when you walked away from the game, did you think the conversation's Collingwood or the conversation's Carlton?
Probably more the conversation's Collingwood. I think from the Blues' perspective, losing Harry Mackay was a big out. It kind of took their ability to go long down the line. Yeah. They're quite small in the forward half, so you take that away, it does limit your ball movement. But I've been so impressed with Collingwood's defence. Like they're just across the year, and especially the last little while, their ability to defend, and this is often you speak about team defense specifically when you talk about defense. Like theirs is a bit of their back line is just ruthless. They're just
well organised.
They're just well organised. They find a way to defend as a group, but ultimately they just win one-on-one. So if you go to on the weekend, first 3 quarters, Carlton wins clearance, wins that territory side of the game. Collingwood just good defensively behind the ball. They win it back, and they scored about 5 goals from D50. So one of their biggest sort of score sources of the night was their ability to transition from back to forward. So that's been their profile. It's hard to be sustainably confident that that's going to work in big games against good sides, good forward lines. But ultimately, at the moment, it is. And it's off the back of great coaching, great defense, personnel down there doing a great job, being able to transition the ball forward and score when they need to. I'm very impressed with the way they're going about at the moment. Do I think they can win the flag? I'm probably not that far in. But I think they'll be really plucky come finals time. I wouldn't want to run into them with their ability to shut a game down, play it in that sort of that neutral game, defensively led, not so much transition and ball movement. I think that they'll be a hard team to get past, but being able to do it over and over and over again, week on week against the best, I just can't see that just now.
Yeah, defensively they'll always be in the game.
Yeah.
It's just generating enough score for them, which in the last 5 weeks they look more dynamic forward the ball.
Yeah, well, I think they put on 200s 2 weeks before and scored 90 on the weekend. So it's not like offensively they're struggling, but it's just a watch for me against the very best to win it all. If we're talking through a premiership, you got to go through like a Fremantle who really strong in the forward half, strong behind the ball. They might be just a rung below the top sides, but they'll be dangerous.
Where do you sit in the North Melbourne discussion? I'm clear on. I think they've improved. There's always debates when they play well but don't get quite the win. Look, they started well against the D's. Firstly, you look at North's runs home. It's pretty difficult by most team standards, but of course, from where North Melbourne's been in recent years, it's going to be difficult. Do you sit in the camp North Melbourne's improved, or they've stagnated, or some? And I don't see any highlights out of it. I sit in the camp of they improve, and the fact that they haven't. I kind of maybe I'm doing gymnastics to prove my point, but
back to the drawing.
Back to I'm a big drawer. They haven't handled the pressure situations, but the point being is they've actually never been in games long enough to be in pressure situations. This is all foreign territory this year for them compared to the previous 5 years.
Yeah, I'm with you on. They've improved definitely. They're above the bottom four definitely. Yeah. They play better footy than that, but at the moment there's a gap between them and the better sides, and that's where they are on the ladder. They've beaten the sides below them. They're always competitive around the teams around them, but against the top sides, they just can't get that done at the moment. Another fascinating team for the off season for me. They're one of the real keys of they've got a lot right, but they're lacking in some key spots. And I think that hurts them in terms of their ability to take that next step. So how their recruiting / list management free agency period for the club goes in the off-season is they're one of the teams. I think they've got, when they've tried to do it in the past, they've been trying to sell a story. They've been trying to sell a path of, look at these guys we've got coming through. I think you've got that. Yeah. You've got it you've got the blueprint, so to speak, to be like, well, this is the talent we've got. These are what we need. These are the needs we need. And you can sell that to players much easier. So I wouldn't be surprised if they land a bigger fish this year and fix some of the areas that they need to.
Yeah, key position.
Yeah.
But there's not many key position guys, one, out there that can shift the needle, and two, if they're on the move, you're competing against the likes of Hawthorn and Collingwood, who have clearly stated, they're in Ben King stakes or whoever else it may be. So the number's pretty small as far as who you can attract to the club.
But ultimately, you have to. This is part of the list management. You've got to find one. That's if there's a difference between you becoming a really top end side, you can draft them, but that's going to take time. So, are you better off without the picks and going to a club that's, I don't know, in that middle tier bracket or on the decline, where you can grab one of their better players and sell the story, whether it be cash and picks, and help another team through a rebuild. There's a lot of ways you can go about it, but you got to be very strategic, and you got to be able to tell a really solid story of growth and what's coming in the future.
As part of our new advisory group, Gold Coast Suns have called us, Doc, and we're presenting our first page, I guess, to give a summary of our document. If we're sitting down with Damien Hardwick and Mark Dougie Evans of the Gold Coast Suns and Bob East as well, where do they start? So everyone goes, well, the talent's there and things like that, but is the talent that good? Is it a system? Is it something culturally? Do they need leadership workshops? Is it a change in the way they play, a change of attitude? Do you need to make big list statements? Like, in a real brief way, where would, I guess, the conversation start for Hardwick, of course, their CEO, Mark Evans, and their president, Bob East?
Yeah, well, I think the first one's around, and again, these conversations that we have are always from the external point of view. We don't actually know what's going on internally at the football club. But if the rumours are true about the guys that want out, I'm just not a big subscriber to keeping people in contract that don't want to be there. I actually think it hurts your culture more than it helps. So that'd be the first point of call is finding the guys that are in it for the long haul and that want to be there and are buying into the future. And if you're not, then I think you move them, and you move them for picks, and maybe you have a secondary off that is like, oh, if this person leaves, we try and chase these guys and try and build the list around what we want to do. Around the dimmer sort of situation around coaching and game plan versus talent, we've probably watched a lot this year around probably the lack of buy-in defensively, and Dimmer's spoken about that early in the year. At stages, their tackle count has referenced that they haven't bought into that part of the game. So maybe you start to go after some guys that really aid you in that part of the game. You've got all the talent, but do you have the guys that are of that? The James Rowbottoms of the world that are happy to play a role, will play whatever role they can, and they'll do the absolute best to their ability in that facet of the game. I think they've got the top end talent, but now it's about building around those guys. Yeah,
so we've done this exercise. It's a bit of the 3-question rule. Like, do you know what you're doing? Are you physically capable, or are you choosing not to do it? So there's part of that. The flow chart, I call it decision making, which all comes back to development. And it might sound strange when you've got so many first round draft picks, but you're never a finished product, like, ever in the game. Like, even in my last year of football, I was still trying to seek advice, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I just knew there's always something in the game to work on. So if you constantly think, well, defend better, well, do you need actually some development in coaching of, well, hang on, when the ball goes that way, what am I doing? Am I cutting off a release? Some of the, I guess, things that brings them undone is, hang on, like, surely you understand that if you're following someone into a defensive stoppage, or the ball's being entered inside your forward 50, you've got to have arm across and take them away. Like, watching some of the edits against the Bulldogs, it's from guys who are high talent, which we could go, oh, high talent. Okay, that's high talent when we've got the ball. But there's 3 phases of play. They've got it, you've got it, it's in dispute. So why are we ignoring 2 of the phases? Or one of the phases for some of them? And
I don't want this to sound disrespectful, but often, having played against a lot of really high talented guys across the league and had them in my own team, your best players are not ever your best defensive players. No. They're not even close. They're very, very good at what they do, and they dominate games of football off the back, and often be tagged so there's someone standing next to them. But they're not the guys that are needle movers from the defensive side.
No, I agree with that. Like, because even you could pick some of the great sides, and you can highlight, as you said, some of the greats. Oh, he wasn't a high pressure player. I get that. Like, that's fine. But it's just even some structural stuff with your flow chart. Like, you're thinking, going, well, and I mean, say if you're a part of the back 6 and we're starting at a centre bounce, why are we so proactive in getting on attack? Like, that's going to be one of the points. But we haven't in your brain ticked off, well, the ball's swinging out to the left. Am I, on the right side of my opponent? The ball's getting closer. Am I closer to my opponent? Win the contest, outnumber, now get aggressive. Where it seems to be, I'm getting really proactive and aggressive, and I'm going to charge off.
And that's often sometimes to do with what you value as a group. Correct. And that this is the biggest discussion that happens with Gold Coast over the break. Is what do we actually value? Because it seems, from looking on the outside, it seems that they value the offensive side of the game, and they don't have that needle towards the defensive side of the game. And that's just an objective view from watching enough of their footy. If that's true internal, then there's going to be a big piece of work about, all right, well, how can we actually get our game to the defensive side of the game? When there's a 50-50 ball, are you slanted towards the defensive side, or are you slanting towards trying to get off your man and trying to get on the handball receive and transition side of the game? It's like 10% difference, but it can make a significant shift over a space of a game.
Yeah, I think they've got the talent. They've got the right coach there as well. I'm not sold on people going, oh, Damien Hardwick doesn't know. He's the right man to do it. They're just, as you said, they've just got to somehow get to the bottom. Hang on. Why are we, as you said, there could be like half a dozen things that they're 2% off or 1% off. But you see in this game that the compounding effect of that. Yeah.
And if ultimately if there's too much of your group on there, there's certain roles in football, and ultimately not everyone's doing the same thing on a football field. There's game plans that are built around certain guys that are match winners. So those guys are playing certain roles, but then is the rest of the group or the other three guys around that compensating to allow the star, for example, to be able to do that? If that's their track, then the guys around the defensive side need to get better, or it's the stars have really got to buy into the defensive side of the game if there's enough of them there.
Let's quickly talk about the Cats. Can they go deep in September without Max Holmes and, of course, Jeremy Cameron? Now, those two are both saying, look, anything's possible coming back, but for the bulk of the remaining part of the season, you expect the first week or two of finals, they'd be without those two gentlemen.
Yeah, tough one for me. I think that they'll make the finals and they'll be there, but if they don't have those two there, I really struggle to see it. It's like taking two of your best pieces off the table in chess, and you're always just going to be playing with one hand behind your back. Ultimately, the first question I had when we discussed it was around, can they win without Jez? Jay Polkinghorne looked great in the weekend, but is it sustainable across the back end of the year to have that without sort of him there? Now you take Max Holmes off the table. That's a massive piece of run and carry, which is they're a defensively sound team that ultimately wins the ball because they've got a few really high talented guys on the outside that break games apart. You've just taken one off the table. If I'm playing against Geelong, I'm tagging Bailey Smith every game from now on. Then you almost got both of them off the table, and their ball movement for me just stagnates for them.
Yeah, that's fair. Hey, now it's time for the Rub It In, our chance to say, I told you so, or brag about a victory, all thanks to DP. Extra strength, feel at work, always read the label and follow the directions for use. DP, what's your Rub It In this week?
Rub it in. I don't know if I've said it on this program because I've only been here for a few weeks, but I've been with you for the whole year. My love for Adelaide.
Yeah, you do love Adelaide.
I was on them early in the year when everyone was talking about their offensive side of the game. They were letting down. They were the most disappointing team for the year. I was soundly in the camp of I really like what they're doing, and I think that their game will turn around. And ultimately, it has. They're the best pressure side in the comp. They defend, being the top three defensive sides in the competition, and their ball movement's just slowly been ticking along over the year. Impressive to go up to the SCG and beat the Swans up there, and ultimately beat them in the tough stuff in the end. The game was decided on clearance and contested possession and their ability to be able to pressure well and defend the ground. So my rub it in for this week is the Crows. I think they're a contender this year.
That is a good TP, extra strength rub it in. Mine is I love clubs just not accepting the fact that, because we always do it. And I'm talking about slow possession, kicking inside forward 50 off the slow play, whether a broken play, as in there's no flow in it, so there's been a free kick or a mark and the game's been slowed down. And for years we see just kick it to the point post, let's take a boundary throw in. For other ones, can we find the short? I noticed this a number of weeks ago and highlighted it on a platform. They call it the Isaac Heaney kick. So narrow side. Everybody else pull to the top of the goal square. You've always got that option to bang it to the goal square. But the guy who's really good one-on-one, who's always going to be a difficult matchup, you isolate it in the pocket and you kick it to him, and probably six times out of 10 he wins it.
Not a bad strike rate.
One or two times they draw it and get a ball up, or it gets punched out of bounds, and maybe you're probably losing 1 in 10. It's a much better strike rate. The amount of times you see players half kick it to the top of the goal square and the forwards are too far back, leaning on the fence, and everyone goes, no one flies for it. At least this way, you isolate in the pocket, you either win it, and we're so good at kicking snaps now, well, that player is in particular because they're normally a high talented player, or it goes out of bounds and you set up anyway with a throw in. So I noticed it a lot, the Swans doing it, and on the weekend, Patrick Cripps.
Snap wasn't on the...
No, he kicked the belly of it, but he's a very difficult man to beat. But you're trying to get something out of, you never used to get something. Like you can imagine Freo, everyone move out of the way. Josh Tracy, go over there. Of course, Tom Hawkins often used to just sit in that pocket. And you kick it to him and it's like hitting a fridge.
Kicking in the pool, I think.
Yeah, in the pool.
Yeah,
just lob it in the pool. That was the Geelong term. Just lob it in a little kiddie splash pool so they can dive into it. But I think we'll see more and more of it that, all right, because the thing is, if you overcompensate with a player there, well, then something else will open up, or you can hit that far one to the top of the goal square.
Yeah, it's definitely an asset to sit there and put someone in the pocket and have a threat there. The kick to the top of the goal square obviously brings in the crummers.
It'll make you nervous if you're the one being dragged there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the team that starts kicking the ball straight to the fat side. That's been a big no-no in footy for a long period of time because of transition defensively, but teams are starting to get a bit more adventurous, so to watch.
That was the DP. Of course, rub it in, extra strength, feel it work, always read the label and follow the directions for use. It's time for my medal, the Bartel Medal, but Jamal always sends through his votes. He gave Bailey Smith 3, Nick Dacos 2, 1 to Marcus Bontempelli. I order a stack or a shitload of 3, 2, 1 votes. The players I judge to be the best from around the week. Plenty of 1 voters, some 2 vote highlights. I thought James Peatling was fantastic for the Crows, and Isaac Rankin, I thought they were really tough. Malera as well. Papley got the Swans back into that game and kept trying. Joe Richards. Sparrow's having a really good year for the Demons. Jake Waterman kicking straight. Everyone's highlighting when he's kicking them wobbly, but when he kicks them straight, you've got to give him his dues as well. A number of Essendon players. There's one that our man forgot to put on print, which actually goes to the leaderboard. But my 3 voters for the week, beware of the Rowan Marshall. Looked good down at GMHBA Stadium. Big D-Fog, Darcy Fogarty. Kai Lohman is playing some good footy. Marcus Bontempelli and Nick Dacos was the name, which I think Joe Campbell might have left off just to... No. Our man left it off just to stir up Eddie as well, which actually impacts our leaderboard. So, Lockie Neal is on 19. Cozzy Pickett got some votes this week on 20. They actually both did. Jordan Dawson on 20. Maxwell Gawn on 21. Naz 21. Marcus Bontempelli on 33. And Nick Dacos on 35.
It's a good list. Darcy Cameron for 1 vote. I think that's a little bit unders. I did work.
You reckon?
Yeah, I thought he was very, very good.
Playing on a first gamer.
Yeah,
not a first gamer.
Most influential player on the ground for me.
Well, there you go. We'll take up your issues.
The Docherty Medal.
Well, all you have to do is head to Eddie and Jimmy at tappedmedia.com.au if you have any issues, Doc, because we'll talk to you Wednesday. You're coming back Wednesday. Thanks for listening. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. It's a really difficult one to follow. Search Eddie and Jimmy. Follow Eddie and Jimmy wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure you watch us on YouTube.